Please stand by. And all right, I think we are on. Let me check my broadcast and all that kind of stuff. What's happening? It's Steve. It's Saturday morning, and going live to work on splitting sub bass and doing stereo width. So we're gonna look at an Ableton session. We're gonna look at some VST plugins. I got a new plugin from Edson Vizcarra. Thanks, man. And we're gonna look at what that does. And if you got some questions, you can ask me. What's going on with your Ableton world? Ooh, there's my monitor up. Cool, looks like audio is cool. Chat's good. Video is good. Looks like I'm the only one here right now. Let's check screen share. So I want to go to my screen share window, and then if I'm in Ableton full screen, let's see what happens when the video comes up. Because right now I see my full screen on the monitor, and let's see. Oh, cool. That took a second on the lag time, but I can see the full window's on. Resolution is not bad, actually. That's amazing. Last time I had a problem where the screen had a frame around it and we weren't seeing the full Ableton window. We were seeing like you were missing the plugins. So, okay. And then if I want to back out of full screen to camera, here I am. Hey, what's happening? It's Steve. So good morning. This is me. It's Saturday. And you might have heard this track before. It's the one called So Many People in the World. This is a fun track. It's a bass line I remembered from back in like 2002 or something I had on samplers with drum loops, and I made it into a track playing with a rubber band. And somehow that bass line popped into my head, and I wanted to reconstruct it and build a track. So this is a piece of music that came from the bass line first, and then I started adding drum loops, layers, chords, pads, all the rest of the electronic music stuff to build it out into a full track. Saw a question in the group from Wesley Walker this week about making drum and bass and adding, I think he was talking about making a big fat sub bass sound, and how do you do the low end or split the sub low end, or how do you mix or whatever. So I want to talk about that and show you what I do with real bass lines in a track. And I saw another cool question from my friend Taib about mixing in mono. Checking levels. Mixing in mono, mixing for a club. What do you do if you're going to play at a show and they only have mono system? What is your audience experience if they're at a show and they're only standing near one speaker and the other speaker is like way across the other side of the field or outside or somewhere? Sorry if I seem distracted. I'm just checking all the places where comments come in. I'm excited that the chat view thing is now inside the members area, so you should be able to see the video player and the chat right underneath it in the same window. That might make your life a little bit easier. So yeah, hey Taib. So we're talking about mixing for mono, and a lot of people say electronic music for clubs, you should just mix it in mono and don't worry about stereo, because a traditional club, like one speaker, they said if you have a left and right speaker in a club, the left speaker is in the bar and the right speaker is in the bathroom. And that's true for a lot of small bars. They do wire them up with crazy rigs. I've had people ask me to help with their system in the bar, and they have a surround sound amp with 5.1 sound, and they have 5 speakers in literally 4 different rooms and the subwoofer in the kitchen. And they're like, yeah, it doesn't sound right, like what's wrong? And I'm like, dude, you're not, oh my God. So I set the stereo amp settings, like the receiver, like a home consumer receiver. I just set it to be all channels. I think I said all channel stereo, so that hopefully every speaker output coming from the back of the amp would give them the same sound in all the different rooms. And that worked. And obviously it's not a 5.1 theater, so don't split the signal across all these different places. People do crazy things with system setups. When you're mixing in electronic music and you're going to play it, you got to assume people are going to play it in a club or on a sound system, because it's sound system music. It's not made for home stereos or live shows or only headphones, or it's not like a record album where you're like, oh, I'm going to hear the guitars on the right and the trumpets on the left, and it's always going to be like that. And when I see them live, the trumpet player's on the left and the guitarist on the right. Like, we're not doing that kind of a band sort of thing. So it is a good idea. This is basic stuff you might have heard me say before. I'm just doing some little warm up to get people time to come in and chat. Basically, you need your low end to sound awesome in mono, because bass is one of the things that has bad phase problems if it's not in mono. You need your kick drum coming through. You need some central elements in the mix that always hold the beat together. So snare drum, hi-hats, hand claps, basic percussion. Those are things that do sound good wider, but you need them to focus in the center for your mix. And honestly, for rock music or anything else, you got to have your bass and your snare and your kick in the center almost 99% of the time. And your lead vocal. Vocals are important, so you want those in the center. What's the theme? The theme is the important stuff goes in the middle to make sure it comes through the music. The less important stuff, like that cool synth lead, I know it's awesome, but it doesn't have to be in the center. It could be on one channel and then have like some chords on the other side and make some opposition with not only the stereo placement, but the frequency ranges. So if you think about a piano, the right hand over here is high notes, the left hand over here is low notes. So obviously if you're playing a piano part, it's going to naturally have a stereo spread where low frequencies go to our left and higher frequencies go to our right. That's a pretty natural way to approach mixing. Not sure if I have to refresh this page to get comments or what, but say hi in the chat, give me a little comment, and say, what up, Steve, because I want to be able to interact. This is our new little forum, and I like to make sure I'm connected with people. So give me a little comment if you're watching, and tell me sound is okay, video is okay, tell me what color sweatshirt I'm wearing, anything like that, so I'm sure I can see your comments. The idea of doing these live videos in the members site, the whole idea is actually that you can come in, ask me questions, talk about what's going on in your life with Ableton, and I could even answer online, possibly maybe even build an answer on Ableton. So let me go into full screen, and I'm going to start doing that right now. So there you can see my screen. One of the answers we got from, one of the questions I got in the Facebook group was from Fabian Bless, who was asking about automation. So I want to answer that with an actual answer. So I'm going to record a little mix and do some automation on this channel. Channel 29, doing pan right left, do some on off stuff, and maybe do some effects stuff. My effects on, they're not, see, gotta check that out. What I'm doing is just recording some automation on channel 29 so that we have something to look at in the automation window. Does it have to be on? I think it does. Let's keep that going, record some automation there. And then we're gonna look at, he was asking, how do you edit, like copy and paste and edit automation? So channel 29, left, right, on, off. Now, we're in the arrangement. Let's go back to the arrangement. Here we have a track on channel 29. All these red dots over here are showing automation. Oh, Vinny After. Hey, what's up, Vinny? Vinny Rafter. What's going on? Where do you live? I'm not sure I know where you're at, or what specifically, what time zone are you in? It's about noon for me. Oh, cool. I can see your comments, and that's good. Yeah, answer me on the chat and let me know where you're coming from. So Fabian was saying that his problem was like this. You go to copy automation and paste it, and you actually get like the audio file gets copied and pasted. See, if I go here and do like duplicate, he was having a problem with that. So what I wanted to point out, first of all, you have the letter A for your automation show hide. The best way to do this is use this little plus sign. So you expand the lane, and now you can see the automation by itself, and it's easier to work with. And then also when you have multiple lanes of automation, see this one down here is for the speaker on off. We can go here to track panning. Now we have special automation for just the left right. Hit the plus sign to drop that into its own lane. We can do track volume, hit the plus sign. And if you're ever recording automation in a complex synth plugin, oh, London, hey, all right, so it's like time for a beer in the afternoon for you. Cool. Hey, if you have any questions about what I'm doing, you can type them in and let me know, Vinny. I'm happy to answer you while we're here with just the two of us. And this is a little thing about automation. So if you have a synth and you're recording and tweaking tons of knobs at the same time, you could have literally your whole screen filled with all these different forms of automation, and it's quite a lot to deal with. And then you can take this and go Command C, copy, select another spot, connect V, Command V. You can also do Command D, do. thing that I really like is, let's say you want to have, we're in the track panning lane, okay? And I want to do some smooth left to right shapes. I can go here and insert one of these template shapes. And if you see what it did, Ableton put in an S-curve, little sine wave. You can take these and stretch them out. You can move your center point around and get a funky custom shape. Or if you wanted to make it like an LFO effect, you could do that. Go here, select it, and just start hitting Command D all the way out. And now you'll have a little pan effect. I know we're not exactly hearing that because I didn't focus on a sound that was easy to hear in the mix. But the point I wanted to make was that automation lanes are something you should expand below and work with down there. So Fabian, when you get around to watching this on the replay, that's how you do that. And let me get back to something that we can listen to. Okay, so here we are on the main session. Got a loop going, and there are a bunch of layers. If you haven't worked with me in sessions before, the first thing I want to point out is that I make bus groups. And I do that to be able to work with individual sounds one by one. I'm going to put a key command on my return. So I got CXV. Let's do V. I'm doing this so I can quickly turn off my effects all at once and make sure that you're only hearing what I'm talking about one at a time. First bus group. If you listen carefully, you can hear sub bass and kick drum. Next is an instrument group. This one has pads, keyboard, and an upper bass line. I'm going to solo these to make sure you can really hear what I'm talking about. There's our copy of the bass line. Here we have some soft pads that are pulsing along in the background. I love this sound. This sound makes the track for me. Just keeps going. Here we have our keyboard sound that I think this feels kind of mono, but I wonder if we could spread that out and get the left-right separation with the high and low, maybe? Oh, I believe I have the MIDI playing at the same time as the audio. I do. It's a little bit of a mistake, but... And then, for some high-frequency stuff in the instrumental section, we got this bleep sound that's panning left and right with auto pan and kind of getting smashed with the limiter to make it interesting. So the point I'm making here is that I set up an instrument mix that has stereo instruments and full range with melody, harmony, lead, pad, chords, and a copy of the bass line. This is a hard group to mix because it's almost like mixing a full stereo mix. You've got a wide frequency range, a lot of instruments to get together. You got to make space for them all. And making bus groups like this is really good practice for mixing on your stereo channel because it helps you get each sound into its own place, get them volume balanced so that no matter where you put this mix, you should be able to hear them all. A good mix exercise is to put it down as low as you can and carefully listen to see if you can still hear each element. In a really good mix, at low volume, you should always be able to hear pretty much everything. And then when you want to boost it up, you can do that. Other groups, basic bunch of drum layers, and another bunch of kind of more synthy type of drum layers that I put in their own group so I can have them on a separate processing. So there we go, basic 3-channel mix. What did I do with this bass? What's going on here? Well, there is EQ and compressor on the group, but let's talk about what's going into the group. So first of all, we have kick drum, and then we have this sub bass. Notice that these are dark purple color. Over here, the low group is dark purple. So I have an idea that when I see a purple track that's over in this section, that's what instrument is going to be on there. And let's focus on the low bass. This is just one layer. I started with 2 layers, and then I made this. I realized, oh, that buzzy sound, it sounds cool. I want to make that really wide in stereo. So I actually separated this electro instrument over to here. to make a new one. So my basic process was I found this bass sound, and I was like, that bass sound is cool. I want to use it in my track. And after I got the bass line notes in place and the groove and everything together, I realized, oh, you know what? The low end of that bass is so big. I want to have the low end as a sub, and the high end of this bass is so cool. I want that to be wide stereo. I want the buzz. I want the fuzz. I want that whole thing happening, and I don't want to make them. I don't want to have that happening on the same channel as the sub bass, because that would be too many things at once. You'd have to get into. It's hard to do side chaining and stuff if you're trying to duck the sub end and not duck the stereo end on top. So I split it. How did I do that? Well, basically I used some filters. You can see a nice big EQ set right there. Let's see what's in the instrument. So it's coming from a sample. Nothing else on there. What's in the filter section? Aha, a low pass filter. So let me turn off the EQ section. In fact, I'm going to go to the low bass bus. So there we go. There's no EQ on the bus group. And on the instrument group, we've got a mono switch, glue compressor. That EQ is off. All right, check that out. Vinny, if you can give me a comment, let me know if you hear the difference when I put this mono switch in and out. I hear it in headphones, and I have my feed set up so that I think you should be able to. I'm not sure if I can see my audio monitors. I think you should be able to hear it in stereo because I have the left-right going out on different channels. And sub bass you need to have in mono, so I dropped this plugin on there. If anybody's coming in on the replay later, you can write me an answer in the quiz section. In the member site, there's this little section for quiz questions. So if you're watching the video and you want to know more about something I didn't talk about, or you want to ask me a question about something we could do next time, down at the bottom underneath the video, underneath the chat, there are these two quiz questions that say replay. Do you have any questions that we didn't answer in this live stream? Yes. Question, Steve, what is that mono plugin doing? You could ask me that. Or future, number 2, future, what would you like to work on next time? Let me just tell you that if you're in replay land, type in the answer, you do submit answers, and I'll get this as an email, and I'll be able to see it and then build a new lesson for you next week, which I think is super cool. Also, I put in this little Google Calendar button so you can add these events to your Google Calendar. Let me just check, make sure I'm not missing anybody's questions. Yeah, cool. So what's the process here? I had this bass sound. I wanted to use it in a track, and I thought that bass sound is so deadly, I need a separate sub, and I need to split the high end off. So first I got the, I made the decision to low pass filter it. There's like the original sound. So I got a low pass filter to start cutting off the high end. And then I added another EQ to round it out, use actually some high pass filter. And that's related to which notes I'm playing. The lowest note is down here, boom, 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 boom. It's like a C. So I put the high pass filter up around 30 hertz. So there's nothing below that low C happening. That's defining the, the power of the low end bass. So we're not having like a super sub frequency like 10 hertz or 20 hertz just flubbing out the stereo system, flubbing out the speaker system without making a pitch or a pressure we can use. So I got an EQ there, then the mono switch. That's making a big difference in my headphones. I'm not sure if you can hear it. I hope you can. And since I was going crazy, I think I did another EQ. There's nothing wrong with stacking up multiple filters. In fact, the difference between this one high pass filter and the one with the 4X is basically that it's like multiple filters together, like stacked, so or multiple poles on one filter. So if one filter takes a sound down 3 dB at the cutoff frequency, then using a 2-pole filter would take it down 6 dB, or depending on how many they're stacked up. It's basically making a bigger volume reduction at the cutoff filter frequency point. Oh, good, you got an answer. He says, that one was subtle on my headphones. I could hear the stereo panning clearly earlier, though. All right, good. So if we got stereo, yeah, that's true. The mono is a bit subtle right now. It'll be more obvious when we're taking the upper buzz and making it wider. So just to keep going, on my EQ, I chose my filter settings for where the notes are happening. And basically, you play around with it at whatever ability level you have with EQ to get it to come out sounding something like what you want. And to check it, I put a master spectrum analyzer on there, and I'm trying to make sure that my bass bumps are roughly equivalent. I don't want to waste your time EQing all day long. I do tend to start doing this and being like, oh, wait, a little bit more, a little bit more. Some tricks are add resonance to kind of volume boost the exact part you want. And you get the idea. I want those low bumps, bump, 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 bump. I want this to feel like a dub house track where the bass is super huge and thubby, and then there's a beat on top. And when you get that going, I could listen to this all day. And what else are we missing? The kick drum. Now, one of the hardest things to do is get the balance of your kick drum and your bass line. Let me just make sure I turned all the plugins back on that I wanted to use. So, yep, we're compressing the bass line a bit to get the notes nearby the same volume level. I hope this is not confusing, or it's not too confusing. The basic idea is I started with an instrument. I used a low-pass filter to cut off the high frequencies. I EQ'd it to specifically detail the frequencies that I'm using in this bass line with these notes. And you can always look at the little box in the EQ spectrum analyzer to show you when you move the mouse, the frequency in hertz will connect to a note in a MIDI note in pitch. So if I put the note right here, it says 30 hertz, note is B1, 32 hertz, note is C0. I know that note is the C on the keyboard, so I'm actually EQing harmonically to tune in on frequencies that work for this specific bass line. That's why EQ is your friend with music theory. Then we did a mono switch to get our bass line in mono, another EQ plugin because I was being super specific, and then a compressor to level out the bass line notes, spectrum analyzer on the master channel, so we can see the kick drum bumping up and down and the bass line notes. And I can see that these are both in their own space. If I cut the bass line, you can see here's our kick drum. Boom, boom. See that shape? It has a peak around 80 hertz, not down at 50, not down at 60. I don't have a huge low bottom sub kick drum because that bass line is taking up the sub end. I want the bass line way down here. I want the kick drum big from, what's that, 160 down to 80. So that's it's a low kick, but it's not the lowest you can possibly get. And now when I unmute the bass, you can see those bass notes popping up. So right here around 80 hertz, there are some bass notes happening, but that's the lowest part of the kick. And this whole big mountain down there is all sub bass with no kick drum interfering with it. That was an EQ and filter decision that happened even before sidechaining. So when you're designing your low end, think about where do you want your kick drum. Look at that EQ curve. That is crazy. High pass filter at 75 hertz, totally boosted up, and I want to cut everything else below it. And then on the low end, I feel like there should be a sidechain compressor in here somewhere, but I don't see one yet. Is that it? There it is. I knew it. Sidechaining, input coming from the kick drum thud, ducking that level down. If I make it really extreme. Hey, Daniel's here. Hey, man, thanks for joining us. I thought you were going to pop in. So I'm doing a lesson that you might have seen before, Daniel. This is about splitting sub bass to make different layers. And I'm just reviewing the sidechain part right now. If you're just coming in, I took this, the idea for the track was to make a dub house kind of a jam where I've got a kick drum, a house beat, and the bass line is really like slow and dubby even though the beats are at 120. So I chose a bass sound. The original bass sound was something like this that has a high-end buzz and a low-end sub. I wanted to separate the sub and the high-end into two different channels on my mixing board so I could work with them differently. So right now we're going through what we did on the sub bass channel. Low pass filter, sidechain compressor coming from the kick. And that's pretty hard sidechain. Mono switch, and then EQ and compressor. Nothing wrong with using a couple different filters and EQs stacked up because the effects multiply. And then on the spectrum analyzer, what I'm really going for is being able to visually pick out the kick drum bumping up and down and the bass notes poking through, so they're both in their own space. And I don't know why it works this way, but when you can see them, you can hear them. I've analyzed a lot of tracks where I take a track I like and I throw it into Ableton with only the spectrum analyzer, and I sit there and watch it, and I refresh the maximum line. I look at bass notes, and I listen to what's happening. And if you have your spectrum set up with exactly these settings, you'll get a really fast response time. You can actually visually see a sound right when it pops up on the line. And that's how you can train your ears to hear exact notes, and then you can go in with the mouse, find them in the frequencies, use that little box to see the frequencies, and then go into your EQs and start dialing in your sound. So that's pretty hardcore audio engineering. I don't know if you want to go searching around for specific frequencies, but it works for me and gets it so that when these two sounds arrive over here to the low bus, here's where the real magic happens. No matter what's happening in the rest of my mix, I can take my low end and work with it, and it's going to keep sounding good. The problem of having, if you're not using a bus group like this, it can be a real problem to adjust your low end because, you know, if I'm trying to be like, oh, I want my sub bass a little bit louder, and then, oh, my kick drum's not loud enough, you know, now I got to bring my kick drum up. I don't want to change the relationship between the kick drum and the sub bass. Once I have that dialed in and the side chain is working and I can hear the kick and the sub together, like one unit, after that, I want to keep that unit like welded together and use only this bus group fader. So if my low end is like way too huge and blowing everything out, I can grab that one fader, bring it down, but I keep the same relationship of kick drum to sub bass line. And that is so important because you need those two to work together so that each one of them is in their own space. And this gives you super tons of control. Same thing as having all your stereo drums in a group. If I have this group really nicely mixed with the hi-hats and snares and everything, I can put it down here, I can put it here, I can bring it up to there, I can bring it down, I can drop it down before a drop, before a song section, and then jack it back up at the drop. And I'm not losing any of the drum elements. It's a lot harder to do that with all your individual drums. Imagine if you want to take your whole entire drum mix and make it a little bit lower. Like, oh, I'll take all these faders and move them a little bit lower, but then this one has automation, and then I forgot one over here, and then the mix is off, and it's all wrong. You could waste 9 million years doing that. Don't do that. How do I undo that? Is that undone enough? Making subgroups lets you easily adjust all the different parts of your mix without destroying the individual levels. It's kind of like if you're cooking, right? Let's say you're cooking and you're putting salad dressing on a salad, and then more people show up and you need more salad. Now, if you have a bottle of salad dressing that's already done, you just add more salad dressing and it's fine. But if you don't have the salad dressing pre-mixed and you're like, oh my gosh, more people came, now we have a whole bigger salad, I'm just going to dump more oil on top, and now, oh, there's not enough salt, I'll put more salt on top, and then it doesn't taste right because you're not actually putting salad dressing on it, you're just dumping individual ingredients way too much into the mix. That's like what happens if you try to change your sub bass by itself, and all of a sudden, all the relationships are off, and it doesn't taste right or sound right. Question, can you basically also use the buses to export stems when you're finished? Yeah, I think you can do that. I don't do that myself very much, but if we're over here, and let's see if I could select only these 4 tracks, go to the rendered track, export selected tracks only. I'm not sure if that, I did that pretty quick. So let's say, okay, I got something in session view, I'm recording a mix, right? Record is on. Wow. Little gap and a little bit of recording. So now we've got, now this is an interesting question. We should probably test this. I've got these audio files and MIDI clips in the arrangement, right? So let's select our whole track. Here is my perfect song that's amazing in every way. Put a marker on there so I know where to, let's be organized and say, okay, on this recording session from 10 to 11, that's the track. It's amazing. It's going to be great. Now, these bus groups are returns with audio coming through. I'm not really sure what happens if I export these. So let's select 1, 2, 3, 4, and make sure. All right. I can see audio coming out of there. I've got those 4 selected. I can see audio in that little green window. Now let's go to render, track, selected tracks only, render length looks like 7 bars. Rendering options include return and master effects. Yes, render is loop, not going to worry about that. Normalize, sample rate. And not to SoundCloud. Where is it going to go? So many people in the world, rhythm pads lesson. Yes, you have to be this organized. It's really true. Stems, render, test. I want to be able to find that again so I know if it works. Model Slacker, yo, 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 I'm back. Model Slacker, who are you? I don't recognize your username from uh, Facebook, but nice to see you. So we are exporting stems. This is a really good question. I'm glad you asked that, Vinny, because this is something really cool to do. You can make, when you're doing a remix, I would recommend doing stems for things like your vocals only on one stem, your beats only on one stem, then separate your instruments and separate your low end. Oh, check that out. On the monitor window, I can see that you saw my file name when I typed in the name just on the screen share and everything. So you get a little lesson on file organization. Oh, it's Nate. Just got my computer working again after like 2 months of being down. Cool, man. How you doing, Nate? All right, I'm done with the render on my side. I'm going to go to my file window in the music folder. La 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 la. Mix up texture products. Steve Dots Creative. Where the hell is this? Now this is gonna have to come out my audio plug. Hold on a second. I'm right here, just plugging in. Okay, now I got my Mac system audio coming into the board. What do we hear? That buzz is a ground loop that happens when I'm using my headphone jack at the same time as my audio interface. So that's not in the render, don't worry. All right, so that's the low group. Here's our percussion group. Okay, so I can't listen to that buzz. Let me tell you, I learned that from DJing. When I was DJing, there was a time when I had my headphone jack as my only audio interface, and then I had a different, oh my God, that buzz was coming through the system, and I was like, what is going on? And that is no fun. So yes, so Vinny, to finish out this question, let's get back to Ableton. What we just did was I recorded some audio into the arrangement. I made sure these bus groups were selected, and then I went to my export window. I did rendered track, selected tracks only, and this is super cool because these tracks don't actually have any audio on them down here. They're only getting audio through from everything else. And yes, I was able to render them out to the master. I didn't specifically check to hear if the percussion stem had the drum reverb on it. Like the drums, you can see that in the hi-hats and stuff. These have like some sends coming from that convolution reverb. I didn't check to listen if the reverbs are applied only to the bus that the things were coming from. So we got to check effects on everything. But the basic idea is, yes, you can export stems. So let's get back to our topic. We're talking about how to separate bass lines. I showed you how to do the mono lows coming out to the low group. Let me get my groups the way I want. And now let's look at our stereo sound. So we're going to focus on that buzzy sound. Let me mute my piano. I love that sound, but sorry, I have to mute you for a minute. Minimize those. That little fella is going to get cut down. Upper bass wider. I made this track pink so I could find it again and see it in the workshop today. So what is going on with this sound? Let's see if I can undo a bunch of the effects and start at the beginning of this channel chain. And I'm using mostly Ableton plugins, and then I dropped some VSTs on there to give you a picture of what else they sound like. And to give you the full picture, I should take off any... Oh my gosh. Now we are hearing only this upper bass sound. There's a patch called Electro Ceramic Bass. I think you could probably find it. That's my starting sound. And I was like, oh my God, that sound is so ill. I got to play with that sound. But I knew it was going to be a problem with having the sub and everything at the same time. So I didn't really do much with the filters in the analog instrument. Those are for tone shaping, not for mix tools. That reverb is part of the sound. Let's turn the reverb off. First decision, put in a high pass filter and get that low end out of there. Let's look at that on Spectrum. Here's the sound when I cut the lows out. Down, bounce, bounce, bounce. That first note's a G. Bounce, 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 bounce. And there's our note C. That bump right there, if you look in the little box, it says the note is C. Frequency is about 65. There's another one down there at 32. Another one up there at 130-ish. So these are the ones I'm looking for. Above 100. Below that is what? Kick drum and sub bass. Okay, so we're designing this wide stereo to be basically above 100 so it doesn't mud up the mix with a bunch of crap that's going to get in the way and make the speakers work too hard and make the amps get too hot and overheat without even a benefit of hearing it. You know what I'm saying? That's what we're going for here is efficient use of your amps to push tons of air in your low end, to blast people in the stomach with the bass and have the stereo width up in your head, like up by your ears in the wide part. It's like, I don't know, bass for your chakra system. So what did I do? I went to the sound, auto filter first, and I love auto filter. It's such a cool sound. If you go to the vintage filters, not the clean one, but the vintage ones, vintage models, you get this cool drive function that makes it buzzier. And I was like, I want this thing to be a nasty, fuzz, distorted buzz sound that is just ripping. So I cranked up the drive. And then I'm like, you know what? That's going to be a little out of control. Let's get some compression on there. And I did a dumb setup. I just said auto release, short attack time, glue compressor, take it away. I'm not gonna fine tune anything. It's okay the way it is. And now I wanted to go a little farther. What is this EQ doing? Well, there's another high pass filter to even tighten up that low end even more. Where is it set? Around 60 hertz, which is what? It is the note C. Or B, half step away. If you put the EQ a little bit below the note you want, you basically get the note you want. And what is popping up over there on filter 3? This is sort of like 1.6K is like kind of like where electric guitars live, around 2K. I'm going to move this back and forth so you can hear what I'm pulling up. And that sounds cool. Now, the reason I'm doing this is I want that upper part of the bass line to come through right here in the mix when everything else in the track is in and you're hearing the drums and the melody and whatever else. 1.3K, I want that bass to pop up there. I want this upper bass line to be huge and buzzy and nasty, but not up here. Like, up around 3,000, it's a little too piercing and can be shrill, like, you know, so I wanted it right there. And I don't usually jack up any kind of sound until after I do a bunch of EQ cuts. So I did all these high-pass filters and cuts first to get rid of that low end. Then I was free to jack up the highs. And if you really want to accentuate it, you could do one of these and get the crisp top end off of there. But that's enough for now. Here is our bass image. And what I did, just so you know, I set up the X key on my keyboard on the mono switch, on the power switch for mono. So as we're listening, I'm going to turn the mono on and off, and we're in the master channel. So whatever we're hearing is going to be the master output, so we can hear the difference of what's happening with the bass. Here it is in mono. Here it is in stereo. I don't hear a difference yet. It's not happening. So let's get this out of the way. Now, what are my stereo widening tools in Ableton? Well, the first one I'm going to go for is flanger, specifically because it has this LFO in here that if you set the phase offset, the LFO is going to move the left and right channels against each other and give you some motion. So let's check that out. Can I make this more obvious? There it is in mono. And there it is in stereo. You can see the stereo image shifts, but I'm not getting a ton of motion. I'm getting a stereo placement shift, but if I want like action and motion and stuff, I might have to go somewhere else. I think you can hear that moving now. And there it is in mono. And there it is in stereo. Now, you might not like that flanger feel. It is a pretty specific kind of. So you could dial that in and get some stereo motion happening with the flanger, and it's that flanger sound. What else do we got? I'm going to go into some VSTs now. This one is from Sound Toys, and it's called the Little Micro Shift. And I can't get inside it, so I can't tell you exactly what it does, but let's hear it. So now it's on. And let's bypass here. There's mono. And there's stereo. I hear that jump into stereo. There's mono. And stereo. Let me know what you think about the micro shifter. If you can hear that, type in something so I know you can hear the micro shift. I love this plugin. It's really easy to use, and I think you get it free. I'm not sure if it's free right now, but Sound Toys does a lot of offers at different times of the year, especially with Black Friday and Christmas coming up. Sometimes they do stuff like you can buy one plugin for $29, and then your discount and then after that you can license the whole entire bundle for like $100 off or something. So it's a good idea. If you see anything pop up from Sound Toys, I recommend you get it because it'll make everything else cheaper afterwards. So Sound Toys Little Micro Shifter. There's a couple different models, and then the dry wet. You can drop this on a vocal and it instantly is like pow, in your face, wide, sounds beautiful, sounds lovely. And bonus, when we kick into mono, it doesn't. Daniel says I can hear the micro shift. Thank you, good, I can hear it too. And when you collapse the mix down into mono, it doesn't disappear. You don't lose anything. What's our peak level here? Minus 23, minus 22, minus 21. Now let's put the, get rid of mono. And the mix does jump up a bit louder. But not too big of a difference. Oh my gosh, I really hear that difference. I'm loving that. But let's move on past the micro shift. And I just got introduced to this plugin called Wider from Polyverse. Edson, what's happening? Edson Vizquera sent this out this morning. He emailed me, or he messaged me, and he's like, dude, check out this Wider. I think Infected Mushroom designed this or sponsored it or something like that. Let's start it at 0, kick it in. So now it's on, and my mono switch is off, okay? Check out what happens when I dial in this plugin. There's only one control. So now it's at 100%. There's mono. I can totally hear that. I can feel it, actually. It feels like, since I have headphones on, it feels like my head gets wide, like there's more space on the inside of my head, or my head has more space in it. I don't know how to describe it. You know what I mean? It's like your ears get farther apart, like there's more distance between your two ears. And it goes even wider. Check that out. I want to drop this into the mix right now and A/B the comparison with the rest of the tracks happening so we can hear the sub, because it gets so big and chunky. I got to check my levels because I want to turn this up, but I don't want to blow out your ears. Okay, so we're clean in the green. I'm going to turn up my headphones and drop this mix in. Ready? Oh, that's so good. There it is at 0, which is not bad. That sound is still working. I can hear it. I can feel it. I hear the buzz. I get it. It's there, right? But what if we do this? It's getting good. And that's like ridiculous. Oh, you know what? I'm having a problem right now. My drums are not loud enough. How do I solve that? Should I turn them up? Yes, I should definitely turn it up. Do I have to go and select every single drum in the mix? No, I don't, because I have them in a bus group. Yeah, Vinny says +1 on Wider. Thank you. Thanks for the comments. I'm really glad you all are hanging out with me, listening to music. This is when it gets to be fun, where you're in the groove and you're like, this is making such a dramatic difference in the mix. Where is my track? Here it is. And you can do fun stuff in your track. Like, you don't have to use it all the time. You could have it the first drop in the song, you have that upper bass patch come in. Like, what if the first time we hear it, it's right here, and then there's a breakdown, and the second time it comes in, you do this, and you drop it wider, and people are like, oh my God, it's so loud. And I forgot the reverb. Not too much, but just enough. A little nice reverb. So I am really digging this wider plugin. This is totally free from Polyverse. I think I can post a link to get it. And where should I put that link? Should I do the link right now? Do you want the link? Tell me yes if you want the link. I can find it from my chat and post it into the lesson chat or into the Facebook group. You know what I'll probably do is I'll probably post this link into the Facebook group. That would be a better place because then everybody can find it and we can talk about it there. And that would make a little bit more sense. What else did I do? Just to round out the end of this stereo sound, let me get back down to only hearing the bass sound so you can hear it. Nice reverb, nice wide sound. And I thought, why don't I just crush the crap out of it? To hit it with some compression. The decision I'm making here is that I want to compress after my plugins, after my effects. So if I have some reverb here, and the reverb is like kind of quieter compared to the dry sound, compression is going to bring up the level of the reverb and make it feel louder. Also, whatever the flanger is doing, whatever the wideners are doing, maybe I don't understand completely the inside of this plugin, but I know if I compress it, I'll get more of a wet-dry mix, and it just feels nicer. So I threw the drum bus on a bass sound. Why not? And that just gets nasty. Check that out. And now I put this auto filter on. My thought process here is I don't want that on all the time, but when I'm in the track and I'm going through song sections, you know I'm going to do some of this. And we let that fade down. And then when we're approaching the place where the beat's going to come back, you get that cranked up all the way wide, all the way open, and drop the kick drum back in, and people lose their minds. And then after that drop, you can keep doing the filter sweep, and it sounds even cooler. If you want to make a breakdown, cut off that high end, let it sit here with the kick drum for a while, do that smoke machine thing, turn on the filter sweep on the white noise, and then when you get right there, you drop in a vocal sample that's like, ugh, and drop the beat back in. I hope you have a better vocal than just, ugh. I think that'd be funny to put it in a track, like a James Brown grunt, like, ugh. But whatever, you know what I'm saying? Sound design is a creative, living, moving thing. So filters, you know, they sound great when they're moving. Don't be afraid to throw a filter on the end of your track or the end of your channel, just specifically for the purpose of tweaking it, not for technical mixing, not for sound design. Sound design is not like, oh, here's the sound, it's going to be the same forever. Sound design is like, hey, we got a starting point, now let's tweak it during the track, and basically our whole live show is going to be us tweaking the sounds. That's pretty much what it is. It's not the guitar solo, it's not, you know, whatever. It's like just tweaking knobs. That's why electronic music is so much fun, and that's why it can be so awesome to just take a couple of plugins, drop them on a basic sound, and give yourself a place to grab it and tweak it and get to hear. Nice wide fat stereo sound. Last thing we should probably do is check how much did I mess up my instrumental mix with all that widener. I added a lot of volume, I added a lot of extra stuff. So after getting this sound in shape, what I want to do is go back here and add in my other stuff. because I don't want to totally bury my other instrument elements. And the idea is that when they're all in there together, this group is still balanced, and it also fits in proportion to our kick drum and our sub, and our beats are coming through nice and crisp. Now that all those guys are there, check our mix in mono. Do we still have a mix? Answer is yes. I'm gonna cut that little sound because I don't really want to hear it. I don't want to hear it all day long. And there you go. I really recommend keeping these two on your master channel, a spectrum analyzer and a mono plugin, so you can check them. I put a, see the letter Z right here on the spectrum? You click in the top title bar and you can put whatever key you want. That way, when I'm over here inside a channel and I'm digging in the plugins and I'm doing all this stuff, and then I want to check the spectrum, how do I get there quick? Keyboard Z, done. I can see it, it's right there, and then I can get back to my channel and keep working on my sound. So if you have any questions, type them in. I'm happy to take a second and talk about whatever is going on in your Ableton brain. And let me get back to camera land. There I am. Hey, there's my new camera. I'm so glad this stuff is all working. It was really hard to get clear images with synchronized 1, 2, 3 vocals and pitch, and I mean the whole thing. Got a little compressor happening over there. I started using this mic so I don't get too much background noise. And I'm pretty happy with how the streams are going, so thanks for being patient with me on that. Kind of just bullshitting right now till wait till any comments come in. It always takes, 45 seconds when I ask you a question. It takes a few seconds for me to see the answer. So what are y'all doing on Saturday night? What are you guys doing tonight? Is anybody playing a gig or doing a session or watching movies with your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whatever? Let me know what's happening in your life. I'm getting ready to go to a cider fest. This is there's this really cool company in Pittsburgh called A Few Bad Apples, and they collect apples from around the city, like from property that has apple trees or old farms that are abandoned, or even some city trees in the parks have crab apples and different kinds of apples. If you don't know, if you're not in the US, the Northeast where I live used to have hundreds of different kinds of apples. Like everybody planted apple trees. It was a main part of our diet for the all year round. They would save apples, make applesauce, make apple cider, I don't know if they dried them too much, but any way you could save apples, they would do it. And they would save them in these big barrels, sometimes in a cold place. And the saying is, a few bad apples spoils the bunch, which means if you got a bucket of apples, they'll last a really long time. But if there's one rotten apple, they're all going to get rotten. So part of being alive in the 1800s, 19th century, was checking your apples to make sure you're not getting rotten apples. The good side of that was when the apples get rotten, they turn into cider that has alcohol in it. So these guys pick up apples, make cider, and they have all these different kinds of cider, and this is the time of year they have a festival for cider. So I'm going out tonight. We're going to have, I think 3 bands, maybe 4. I think it's 3 bands. Maybe 4 performances, but like 3 of them are bands. And I'm going to set up some mics in this big old building. And one of the bands is really cool. They're like a bluegrass, like a country band. And it has upright bass, guitar, violin, fiddle, and I think a lap steel guitar, like the solo with the metal bar. And all 4 people sing. But you know what they do? They stand around one microphone, and they all get they get their bodies positioned so every person is about 1 meter away from the microphone, like in a semicircle. And there's only one microphone, and they all put their sound, their instruments, and their voices into that one microphone, and the band sounds amazing. It's a really cool old way of doing a recording or a performance. And then if someone's doing a solo, they go in closer and everybody else backs up. So it's like teamwork, where the person, like the violin solo, they'll go up close to the mic and then it's louder. Or the person singing, the instruments back up and the voice goes, and the singer goes close to the mic and that gets louder. And that's how they basically mix their music, by physically moving closer and farther away from the microphone, which I think is so cool. Nobody does that anymore. It's a great technique to know too. If you only have one mic and you got to get a whole band on stage, what the hell do you do? So that's what I'm doing tonight. Oh, no way. Vinny's playing at a warehouse party. Get the hell out of here. What kind of music are you playing? Is that, I want to hear about that. If you have any chance whatsoever, Vinny, to make a short video, like 30 seconds of the dance floor with music going on at your party, I would love to see it. see the colors and the sound system and what kind of music it is. I know you're not going to probably have time to make a great recording or whatever, but sometimes people do have a live stream happening. So yeah, share a link to that. I'm totally down with seeing people's parties. You know what would be the ultimate dream for me with Mixitecture would be like, you make a track, you bring it into the group, you share the mix, ask for feedback, and we give you feedback, right? And then you're like, okay, it sounds better. Then you bring it to a gig and play it at a party and make a video and you say, here's the track, I just made this, it's my original song, here's all of us at the party, and real people are rocking out to this music after we shared it and got feedback on it. Like, that would be so cool. I would love to have that happen for everybody. I know for me it was really hard to start playing my own tracks at parties because, believe me, I tried and it sounded awful. I would literally drop a cassette tape into a system at a party and be like, yeah, this is my new track, and everybody's like, cool, let's hear it. And then it starts and they're like, when's the bass gonna drop, Steve? And I was like, the bass was in for 2 minutes already, something's wrong. And they're like, play that other record. I hope that doesn't happen to you, Vinny. But yeah, it's super fun when you start playing your own originals at parties and you feel people react to it and you made that track and you're like, this came right out of my head and now all these people are inside this music. That's one of the best feelings there is, and that's why I make this music and why all y'all do it. It's like Funky Tech House. Are you making originals? Are you putting it out there? I think that'd be cool. No pressure. It might take a little time to get there, but you know, as soon as possible. I recommend like trying to sneak a mix in. Maybe even if it's just at like the end of a party, you know, when it's almost like the chill out time. You're like, yeah, I'll play some of my beats, see what happens. That could be fun. So, all right, it's about an hour in here. Oh, it's exactly an hour in. How about that? So if you have any questions out in replay land, please use the quiz section in the member site to type in a little answer, a little question. Let me know what's on your mind. I would love to design more lessons like this to specifically talk about what people are working on. Coming up pretty soon, I'm going to do something with reverb in detail to talk about which reverb do you use? What sounds get what kind of reverb? How do you know what reverb goes on a vocal or a snare drum or whatever? I got a question that was really cool from Steve Farrar, Conscious Dub, in our group, and he was asking me just like, how do you know which compressor to pick? Like, there's a standard compressor, there's glue compressor, there's a limiter, and then there's a million VST compressors. Like, what's the difference? How do I pick one? What do I need to know? I thought that was a really cool question because it's something I think about every time. Every time I need a compressor, I'm like, all right, what are my goals for this device? Why am I using a compressor? Where am I going to get it from? And what do I have to accomplish? So I love that kind of question. Same thing with EQs and filters. What EQ do I use? How do I know how much is enough? Why do I choose that one? Where do I put it? I love all those questions, especially because I can first show them on a live video and then actually take the video, take the Ableton session from the video, save it as a session lesson with instructions and automation in there to show you exactly what we did. And you could download the project and learn by doing it inside Ableton. So that's kind of like my vision of where I'm going with all this is making stuff that we can teach, play with, learn from, share, and do offline as hands-on lessons that force you to make music while you're learning instead of watching YouTube all day. That's my plan. Any last questions? I'll answer them in emails or something like that because I got to get off right now. Thanks so much for watching, Daniel and Vinny and Nate and anybody else who is secretly watching without typing. You're a little troll. I'll be on all week. I'll be around. Let me know what's going on, and see you next time. All right, thanks. End broadcast. Beep.